So we are going to walk through a little scenario for her to spell out how the mechanics work as best we can. So first off, as you can see, we are going to roll. So first off, imagine for a minute June is carrying a heavy, I don't know, chamber pot that she's just come from the toilets, and she's miserable, unhappy in the fact that she's carrying all these chamber pots when suddenly she hears a noise downstairs. And so she is going to first roll her perception, which we can hop over to her character sheet and see. Yeah, that's right, I made a character sheet for this. And we're going to hop over and see she's got 36 perception. So she is going to roll flat on her perception and scoring a 93. Unfortunately, that is not her. That is not one of her lucky numbers, nor is that doubles. And most importantly, it is above her attribute rating of 36. So because she has rolled a D100 above her attribute, she is considered failed. Now, I never want to say no in good improv. So in this case, this would be something that we would call failing forward, where it would completely kill the energy of everything going on to just say no, June loses. And so instead, what's going to happen is she is going to hear something, but she is not going to perceive it as danger. It could just be a noise, but it could be something threatening or non-threatening, but she is going to act like it is perfectly normal. So she is going to continue walking up this way, continuing on. Now, it's at this point that... Sorry, I have to go into my assets to find... embarrassingly so, I have to find Bandit. Now, because she wasn't walking with care or stealth, she would have had the other opportunity to... She would have had the opportunity were she relaxed, or were she able to catch that, she would not walk in such a relaxed way and thus not get herself nearly as in trouble. And here she is going to come across... Wow, those are like actual soldiers. Wow, I was not expecting Roll20 to have so many things. All right, let me try to find... I'm sorry, normally this would be... Again, the thing I do not understand about Twitch is this part. But it's okay. No, I'm gonna use a samurai. So as June, a very tiny samurai, a little tiny itty bitty samurai. So as June is walking, suddenly one of the bandits below hear her footsteps and come running up. June is now face to face with a bandit, or with this samurai bandit who she needs to deal with. So this is going to initiate combat. There's no initiative rolling system in PM. We all use something. We all simply just ask the question: advantage or damage. Now, advantage is the main way that you generate advantage, but more importantly, you generate things in combat called counters. Counters are little +1 modifiers that would change Jun's roll from that would change Jun's attribute from that regular 36 that she has. There we go. From that 36 that she has, and increase it up to 37, 38, and so on, adding on every single success she gets. So were this a regular game, we would ask June as the player advantage or damage, and then I as the GM would make a decision as to whether or not Mr. Bandit is rolling for advantage or damage. But for the purposes of this, we will say that June is going to roll for advantage, which she just scored a 2 on, well under her 36. Whereas Mr. Bandit is rolling a 19. But let's say for the sake of argument, he is also has a 36. So because his gap between his roll, or the number he rolled, and his attribute of 36 is smaller than June's, that would be considered, that's what we call the measure of success. And so June, with the higher measure of success, is considered the winner in this situation. So she automatically is going to receive 1 counter. All right, I always forget I have to push enter on Roll20. And he gets nothing. Now, what does that look like in this situation? Well, I still appreciate you coming, Casper. But now, what does this look like in story? Because June just, rolled a number, got a number up, and now has +1 to every single roll she has. With this, this is sort of the trivial motions of combat. This is the moment of just, oh, I swing at you, you swing at me. In this case, what we're going to have our friend June do is she is going to slam her foot on the ground, startling this samurai bandit, making him back up a little bit as she moves it using her advantage. So with that, she has gained 1 counter, thus gaining 30. Now, next roll she makes for her... All right, I rolled on her against her perception. Her dexterity is still too higher. Whoopsie. So now she is going to roll again. We ask her advantage or damage. And she is going to roll advantage again, this time scoring 14, against the crushing failure of our friend, the bandit. We continue like this. The advantage roll doesn't really take fluff. I only explained it for the purposes of this. In a successful advantage roll, it's just very quick, very fast. If there were other players, we would go around the room, and if there were other people who were in a situation, it would go, okay, your turn for advantage or damage, your turn for advantage or damage. But because it's June, it's just very fast, advantage or damage, advantage or damage. And we're going to go again, advantage or damage for June. She's got 3. And this poor samurai bandit just cannot catch a break. So she is now up to 3 counters, which means her original dexterity of 38 is now turned into 80 or 41. I'm bad at math. Anyway, so she is still holding this chamber pot, outmaneuvering this particular bandit, doing stuff, but now she's thinking it's time for damage. And so she is going to roll this time 55. We'll talk about what that means in a second. Whoof. So, unfortunately, June has made a damage roll, but she's rolled a 55, which is higher than her modified number of 41, which would be a failure, especially considering our friend the Bandit Samurai has only scored a 4, which is well below his 36. But he was only rolling advantage, whereas our friend June, who sorry, 1 second. Darling, could you please close the door to the bedroom? I can hear myself. Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Sorry, we have cats, and cats know how to open doors. Anyway, so him rolling that 4 is a clear success on his part, but June doesn't quite fail. June, in this situation, she does fail, but with that 55, by rolling doubles on a fail, it is considered a moss of 0. So had our friend the bandit rolled an 81 again, she would have still succeeded by the literal narrowest of margins. Unfortunately, that has not happened, and as they say, we have to let it ride. And our guy adds 1 counter and takes 4. So he now has 4 counters up to a total roll value of 40, and June is back down to 38. So he has a larger ability to succeed, but she is now in danger because he is going to roll for damage now, and she is still standing here holding a literal pot of crap. So we're going to roll. She rolled a 57. He rolled a 22. Doubles on success. We will deal with kicking something in a second. Grab. So, June does not want this to happen. In lieu of that, she is going to refer to her specialties. And you can see her specialties here with these little indicated check marks. In order to save herself, the GM is very forgiving, and it is not stated anywhere. The GM is very forgiving and allows her to add one of her specialties or kick her roll with something. And so in this case, she is going to use her tier... Let's go with her tier 3. No, I don't feel... Yeah. Let's go with her tier 3 in cooking. So we'll make that blank. She's using it now. And she is now using her tier 3 in her specialties, which are things that she is particularly good at in her life. And she is using that as a creative way to protect herself. So June's player is going to argue that her having a tier 3 in cooking relates to her carrying around pots all the time, and she's used to maneuvering quickly with the pots. So she is going to roll a d6 because that is what a tier 3 does. Unfortunately, it's still not going to work for her because she is going to because she has to replace one of these numbers with that 6. Unfortunately, that isn't going to work out for her because she still can't beat this guy. Plus, he has doubles as a success, which means he gets an automatic plus 30 to his already existent moss. So June is going to have to take this stab. And so June is going to take, she's going to take 4 damage. Plus, let's head over to equipment real fast because Christian didn't stat out how much the spear is. And this should all be pulled up prior. So he's got a spear which goes for plus 7 damage and deals piercing damage. So she is going to be taking plus 7 to her damage. We're going to add his 3 might bonus, which we'll talk about might bonus in a second. Actually, I guess to explain, the might bonus is this number here. It's just using the tens place. Yes, there is a space on the character sheet where this would all be, but I mocked this up today on the bus ride home from work. So we're going to add 3 to her. So we're going to add 3 to his damage. So he's doing 7 plus 3 from his spear. And then we are also now going to roll 1d4, as that is his damage die, which on the character sheet you can see here. This is June's melee damage stat, which would be 3 plus 1d6 plus any weapon she would use. So she is going to be taking 7 plus 3, which is 10, plus a d4. She is taking 11 damage. June does not want to take 11 damage. So she is going to spend down and drop that down from 11. She is going to drop that all the way down to 4. That's how math works, right? You so specialties are added at character on character sheets, but you get them back by performing certain actions in game. We'll talk about that in a second. I'm going to say that she gets, or that one of her. I'm going to throw this in very, very quickly. C and B. We'll talk about that in a second. So she is going to walk that down to 4 and head over. And now we head over to the conditions table. And we're going to say she's going to take this on the torso. So we go to stabbing, and then we go to stabbing condition 4. So she is going to, on her torso, take a cut against her chest that is going to be such a fine thing that she won't be able to bandage it. And she is now bleeding, and she is now in a bleeding state. Stab 4, torso, and we're going to say bleeding state, no first aid. So June is now in a crisis because she is now actively bleeding out, which means every round of combat, she is now actively bleeding out, and I'll explain that question in a second. But now her, got my train of thought back. So she is now actively bleeding out from this, so she needs to end combat and find out whatever the heck is going on with these bandits. But doing so, she cannot. I misinterpreted my own rules. Okay, to explain, going backwards a little bit, the conditions are things that are given to you based on these tables, but I recently sat down and cribbed all the flavor out of them so that GMs can come up with their own sort of narrative. So in this case, all we know is by stabbing 4, she enters a bleeding state. How she does that is up to the GM or even the player inflicting it upon someone else. And so my bad. It's not bleeding state, no first aid. It's that bleeding states can end without on their own, but in this case, she is not going to stop bleeding until she can apply first aid to herself. So that is the more specific. That is the more specific way of putting that. My bad. As I go through the rules, I know the game I made. So June is now bleeding, which means every round of combat going forward, she is going to lose 1. She is going to lose 1 from her knowledge, her connection, and her cognition. And that is not returned until the condition is fully resolved because she has less blood. So if this continues for her endurance bonus number of rounds, there is a chance she could become incapacitated. So she needs to work this out quickly so that she can apply first aid. Or she could waste an advantage roll and take a first aid. The choice is hers and hers alone. But for right now, our girl June is pretty aggressive, is a pretty intelligent person. So she is going to swap her tactics. She is going to roll her rapidly diminishing connection, a value of 31, which she rolled a 4 on. Oh, also, I should mention that this guy loses his counters because he because he performed a damage roll. So June is going to collapse down. June is going to roll her connection, and let's see if she succeeds. She definitely beats him with his 6 moss compared to her much larger moss. even without it. And she is going to drop to her knees and pretend to be injured to initiate her first stunt. Now, she is going... a stunt is where players who love flavor get to shine. Because in a stunt, you get to describe a bigger action for yourself. And usually you want to involve multiple roles and multiple risks. In this case, she is going to use the situation that happened to her, which is a tier 1 stunt, to add the to double her counters or provide the number of counters available, which in her case is 3. So she is going to automatically get 3 counters for putting herself more at risk. As this soldier comes over, she is then going to throw in her lifting specialty, which is in her character sheet as a tier 1, which a tier 1 is equal to a D10. And she is going to first roll a damage roll. In this case, the number of counters comes from her con bonus of 3, because this is because if you have normally in a stunt, it would double the amount of counters you have. If you don't have any, it automatically awards them without a roll. And so she is going to roll a 21, and she is going to use that 21 to immediately kickstart a damage roll to slam the full chamber pot into this guy's head. She is going, so with her 3 counters, plus her might bonus of 3, she has, and then her 1d6 of damage. She gets no weapons bonus, unfortunately, because there's no weapons bonus for the chamber pot. She is going to roll 1d6. So she is going to hit this guy for blunt 9 on the head with her chamber pot. And so we're going to head over to blunt 9. But unfortunately, he also has health, naturally. He has a health value of so rather than her, unlike her, he can't spend health. He just has a flat health value, which in his case, his flat health value is 9. Or sorry, not 9. Jeez. No, she did 9 damage. His flat health value is 5. That value is decided by the NPC. So whatever the NPC stats are, they receive that. So she is going to be dropped down, so his 5, he is disarmed, or if he had no weapon, but in this case, he's disarmed, and she takes his spear away. She loses her counters, and 1 round of combat passes. So she reduces her knowledge, she reduces her cognition, and she reduces her connection. But the good news is there's now a spear at play. So she is going to immediately roll through, no counters, pick up the spear, and try to stab him. So with that 41, not looking great. Yes, the reduction is from the bleeding state she's in. Let's see what he does. He rolls a 17. June is not tolerating that. She is going to use a specialty. In this case, she is going to lean on her survival instincts and and deprive herself of another specialty. And she is going to use her survival because she never says die. So she is going to pick up her spear, or she's going to pick up this guy's spear and try to roll 1d6 to turn her life around. And with that, she rolls, as she can replace that her 41 and make it an 11. So in doing so, she turns it around and rolls doubles under, meaning she gets a critical success. She is incredibly successful with that and automatically scores another damaging hit. So she gets the +7. Unfortunately, she has no counters. Unfortunately she has no counters, but she still has 7 +3 +1 d6. So we're gonna roll that d6 damage. Oh, it's another 1. She hits for 11, and we're gonna do 11 minus 5, and she's gonna hit for stab 6 on him. Stab 6. Immobilize with a might test. So what she is going to do is she's going to go for the torso, and she is going to stab him in the stomach. It's going to miss all those vital arteries and all those vital organs, and she is going to pin him to the wall, or to that little wall right there, thus rendering him immobilized unless he can pass a might test. Now, this is something important to PM. Death is something critical to the game. We are almost never trying to kill an NPC when you could have them surrender, render them stunned, render them immobile. That is to make sure death matters. And so in this case, our nameless samurai spearman has just been pinned to the wall. June can now back away, and he is considered immobilized. She can now disengage freely. So, and he is now stunned but conscious, still dangerous. But she is going to take this time, do a little RP. She is going to patch up her wounds, stop the bleeding state, which in this case we are going to check what is her cognition, because she's not exactly a medicine person, so she's just going to kind of use her cognition. And you know what? Let's kick it with a survival in case. And so we'll kick it with a survival in her case. So she is going to roll 1d100 to get a 39. Not quite there. So instead, she's going to kick it with her tier 2 in survival, because when you're in the woods, you need to figure out how to stitch things up quickly. She's going to get a d8, and she is going to, and we're looking at, oh, she just misses it. This poor girl just misses it. Oh, no, with that cog. So she manages to get herself down to a 34, a measure of failure, also called a moth. So what I'm going to do as the kind GM, remember we fail forward here, is she has now managed to, at the very least, tamp down the bleeding enough that it is now a bleeding state. It is now a bleeding state with an end. So she is going to roll 1d. She's going to roll 1d10. 5. So at this point, for the sake of the story, we're going to say 5 rounds. And what we're going to immediately do is she's going to still get pretty woozy, and she is going to take 5 more rounds of that and reduce herself down to 25 connection and reduce her down to 26 cog. Now, again, she will get this back. The good news, though, is that in that fight, she betrayed that guy's trust. She pretended to be wounded and made herself look weaker. So you can see over here on her sheet, she has the B. She has that letter B for her face. That's something that has to do with character creation, but fundamentally, what that means is one of her character traits, one of the core intentions of who she is the fact that she is capable and commits betrayal often. And so for that, we would I don't have a strike through on this, so I'm going to delete it. But because she leaned on betrayal, she gets all of her counters returned to her because she acted in a way that was in line with her character's intentions. We always want to reward people for playing their characters as intended. And so she came out of that pretty all right. That is the core of that is the rough core of sort of how combat behaves in PM. I am open to explaining some more aspects if there are more questions, but that is the basics of rolling in combat. If you would like to know more regardless, you can head over to perpetualmotiongames.com, where the mostly up-to-date beta rules are available for free. You can also get this fillable character sheet as well as another fillable character sheet, or a non-fillable character sheet if you prefer printed. I'm now scrolling through the questions really fast. How many types of damage are there? At the moment, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 types of damage at this moment. I am trying to figure out how to add more over time, but I do not know enough about medical things to be like, oh, this is what happens when you do X to somebody. But, and scrolling through, yes, you can also ask mechanics questions in the Discord. How does combat change with multiple people? Okay, so give me 1 second. So I didn't stat multiple people, so I will just show you sort of the rough idea. We're going to add Samurai's friend. Now, do you mean multiple people as... Ooh, I would okay, let me focus on the character creation one, but to answer Casper, I would be happy to touch on character creation at another time, mostly because it's a nice step-by-step process. Maybe next rerun week I will go over character creation for y'all. But the real quick, combat with multiple people happens almost exactly the same. It's important to know the time scale of combat. So as things happen in combat, each person in this situation gets a question of advantage or damage. And so they cycle around as they do, but the person who is out of combat, the single person who is in combat can accumulate all of their counters. That's the key difference. So say this guy has 2 counters. 2 counters. June has 1 counter at this time. This guy has 5 counters. And this guy has 1. So we're going to cycle around advantage or damage this guy. And he fails, giving June not just his 2 counters, but also the natural progression of the counters. So she is now up to 4 counters in the course of 1 turn. And then she is going, or in 1 contest. And then she is going to roll again. Say she succeeds in this situation, taking this guy's counters. And she is now up to 9. And then she's over to this guy. And if she wanted to, she could roll damage. And immediately her damage roll would be kicked with 9 additional things. But that is her choice. And she could even accumulate one more and bring herself. Oh, wait, actually, she's not at 9. She's already at 10. So she went in this one turn, in these 2 turns, she went from being way on the back foot at only 1 counter against 3 other people, each one who could separately deal damage to her, to swinging it around to having 10 counters on herself, meaning she is now swinging on a 48 to these guys' 36s. Plus, if she managed to pull out a weapon, like one of her, like her gear, for example, she has her iron cleaver, that automatically provides a +5 to her dexterity rolls in combat. So she could be well at an advantage if she's going to use her iron cleaver. Unfortunately, she doesn't have access to her iron blunderbuss at this time because that's behind the bar downstairs. But ask some people what they think about about June holding a blunderbuss, and I'm sure they'll tell you some good things. So that's one of the bigger things. So that's how you deal with multiple combatants. The other thing I didn't mention because June didn't roll well enough in the initial, she kind of triggered an encounter already, is that when you're out of combat and you roll over a Moss of 10, you receive your attribute, June, sweetie. June. Thank you. And you receive over a Moss of 10, you receive the attribute bonus that you rolled. So say that was endurance for her. Her endurance of 4, she receives this endurance bonus of 4 because she rolled over a Moss of 10 in that last roll. Conversely, if she failed, like so, she wouldn't lose all of her counters because she's rolling out of combat. She would only lose her attribute bonus out of combat. Question in the chat: what do all the attributes mean? They're your pretty standard different aspects of who you are. Might, dexterity, or might, how strong you are. Dexterity, how quick and agile you are. Endurance, how much damage you take. Perception, how well do you see. Cognition, how can you think on your feet. In other games, this is sometimes called like wisdom, but this is more about can you put stuff together quickly without really knowing a plan. Knowledge, how much you know. Connection, your ability to discuss with people. And discipline, your ability to control yourself and resist external things. What would you say an average peasant would have for attributes? 20s. Roughly, yeah, probably. Actually, no, not even. Honestly, anything above a 20 is considered like you are a person of competence. The average idiot off of the street would be fairly low unless they have base attributes, because one of the other things that's key to PM is that you are all playing competent people. I care a lot about making sure my players never feel like they're holding the idiot ball, so to speak. And so in that way, I try to make sure everybody feels like they are competent, even when they only have a 1/3 chance of succeeding. Because also, I try not to make like mundane things rolls. I try to not just have like rolls be walk down the street, dodge this random truck. I'm not going to talk about social combat or I explained lucky numbers already. They behave like doubles. I'm not going to explain social combat or analytical combat right now because mostly because those two things are not up to date in the beta book yet. And once I put those in as being up to date in the beta book, then people can follow along as they go. Movement rules: you move your dexterity bonus in grid squares if that's what you like. Personally, I don't care. If you succeed in advantage roll and you want to move a couple feet, move a couple feet. I'm not a grid person. I'm not a I am more of a circles of play kind of person. Um, Otherwise, we will address any other things that come up in. Otherwise, I will address other stuff as it comes up, and if there are questions, please feel free to head over to the PM book. That one also, I would like to point out, is art is expensive, and so instead I put all these little description boxes, and uh, you can use the art, and you can use your imagination to imagine not just gunpowder, treason, and magic, but also other settings such as Twilight of the Old Gods, or Rail Warriors, not a game line that I don't even follow, so I don't even have anymore. So there are so many. You can read through those and enjoy those. There's also rules describing. Superpowers and how magic used to work. Magic is another one that needs to get updated, and I will explain at a later time. So otherwise, there's lots of things that we can sort of go over, but that's the core of it. Roll under and roll better than everyone else. I am now going to throw it over to the rerun, of last session. And so enjoy. Hit me up in Discord. I may be in chat, or alternatively, Grant or Kat may yell at me to be in chat. But I am notably bad at scrolling chat. Yes, I said it is a D100, but we also use every single die in the game, available, because of damage die and attribute die. We use a whole bunch of other stuff. So I will see you again for another one of these in 2 weeks when I go over character creation. So otherwise, stay tuned, and thank you for watching.